Welcome to this course on building a custom responsive WordPress theme using the Bootstrap free framework. My name is Chris and I'll be guiding you through the process step by step. We will get started by building a great looking theme template using Bootstrap, one of the most popular front-end frameworks in the world. Once this is built, I will guide you through the process of converting this to a fully functional, great looking custom WordPress theme. In this course, you will learn things such as how to create websites using Bootstrap, adding custom navigation menus, the WordPress loop, how WordPress templates work. You will learn about widgets, custom fields, and header images, how to add language translation support to your theme, and much more. So this will be the great looking website we're going to be building throughout this course, and this is the home page. It's a spa-based WordPress theme, and I'm going to guide you through every step of the process. So we're not just going to be building the home page, we're going to actually be building the full site, including various blog pages, contact and about us pages. And as we get to the WordPress section later on in the course, areas such as the latest offers section, we'll be adding custom fields to make sure that the website is fully customizable. And scrolling further down, we've got a shop online section, and then the footer section at the bottom with various links to the About Us, the Contact Us page. And if we scroll back to the top of the page, we'll also have a fully functional blog with a working sidebar, which includes a search box, and also ways to filter down the posts by the tags, the categories, or the months of the year. And of course, this will all be fully customizable by the site administrator. And we'll also make sure that users of your website can leave comments on the posts. So if you go into the individual posts, we'll now get the full version, links to previous and next posts, and the comments section below. And also we'll have a latest news section, which is pretty much based on the blog section, but we apply WordPress filters to filter down the blog posts by posts tagged with the category of news. And we'll show you how to do that. So there'll be no unnecessary content just to fill up the course, just straight to the point videos, each one teaching you a new skill to use for your own projects or for paying clients. And you will also pick up some PHP along the way. So what are you waiting for? Join me now on this course and I look forward to having you on board. Okay, so welcome to the Bootstrap section of this course. In this section, we'll be building our website using the Bootstrap framework, which later on in the course we'll use to convert to a fully responsive custom WordPress theme. So to get started, head over to getbootstrap.com and hit the download Bootstrap button. You'll be then taken to the download section. There's 3 different versions of Bootstrap you can download. I'm just going to go for the standard version on the left. So hit the download button. So once that's downloaded, if we go to the downloads and then unzip that, and because our theme is called Tranquil Spa and this is the Bootstrap template, I'm going to call this Tranquil-WP, and then I'm going to save this onto the desktop. There we go. Okay, so you should have already downloaded the images folder, which is included in this video. If you haven't, go ahead and do that now, and then drop that into our Bootstrap folder. So if we open up the Bootstrap folder and take a look at what's included. So first of all, we've got a CSS folder, which includes all the Bootstrap CSS, both the standard version and minified files. There's also the fonts folder, which includes all the glyph icons. There's our own images folder, which we just put in. There's also a JavaScript folder, which includes the Bootstrap JavaScript files. So to get started, if we open up the text editor, and then I'm going to drag in our project folder. There we go, so the Bootstrap folder we've just downloaded includes pretty much everything we need to get started. The only thing I need to add for now is an index page. So I'm going to press Command and N or Control N to create a new page. And I'm going to save this as index.html and place that inside the Tranquil WP folder. So once we've got our index page, we need to now head back over to getbootstrap.com. And still within the Getting Started section, if we just scroll down a little bit further until we find the basic template. We're going to use this as a starter template. It includes all the basic HTML structure and also the links to the Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript. So just hit the copy button. Then back into the index page, we can paste that in. So for now, I'm just going to change the title of the web page just to Tranquil Spa. And then let's hit the live preview button and see how it's looking in the browser. There we go. So it's a pretty basic template. We've just got the Hello World heading, but it does save us a lot of time with creating the index page. Okay, so we've mentioned that Bootstrap comes with its own CSS files, which is great for a starting point. But we also want to make our template custom. So we're also going to add a new CSS file. So I'm going to create a new page and save that as custom.css. And I'll place this in the CSS folder. Okay, and now let's link this in the index page. So as you can see, there's already the link for the Bootstrap minified version. So if we just copy this and the comment, we can paste this just below. And we'll call this the custom CSS. And also change the file name to custom CSS. So there's just one or two other things we need to link into our web page to get started. So the next one is the custom fonts. So if we head over to Google and search for fonts, and that'll take us to google.com/fonts. So once we're in there, we can search on the top left. The font I'm going to use for this web page is called Merriweather. You can choose a different font if you have any preferences, but I'm going to stick with this for now. And I'm going to select the standard Merriweather. So what we need to do, we need to look at the boxes on the right hand side and click on the second box in, which is the Quick Use tab. So Google provides us with different font weights we can use, and every time we select a font weight to download, it shows us the impact on the page load times. So the fonts we're going to use in this project is the 300 weight, the 400, which is the normal size, and also the 700 for the bold text. And it's really easy to include into the project. We can just copy the link for the head section and paste it in below our CSS. And I'm also going to put a comment in there just for the custom fonts. So we'll save that and head back over to Google Fonts. And then the last thing we need to do is integrate our fonts into the CSS. So copy the font family and then head over to our custom CSS file. So the font family will go into the body section, and I'm just going to start by adding a comment just for the global section. And this section will keep all the styles which we're going to be using throughout the site. And we'll start with the body section. So paste in the font family. And while we're at it, we'll add the font weight. We'll add the standard font weight of 300. And also add the font size to be 16 pixels as standard. So that's how we add the fonts to the website. And then the very last thing we need to do for the setup is to go back over to Google and search for Font Awesome. And then go to the GitHub page for Font Awesome. And this is going to be the icon set we're going to be using for our website. If you want to check out the icons which are available, just select the icons tab at the top and you can take a look at all the different ones which are available. So to download these, we need to go to Get Started. So there's a couple of easy ways to include these in our project. We're going to go with the CDN route, which simply involves copying the link and then pasting that into our head section. And this links our website to the Font Awesome icons, which are hosted at this address. So lastly, I'm going to copy the comment, paste that in, and name this Font Awesome. And then save that. So there we go, so that's our Bootstrap section all set up. And if you join me in the next video, we'll continue with the project by creating the head section. Welcome back. Now we've got our Bootstrap project all set up. Let's take a look at the final project and take a look at what we're going to be building in this section. So next we're going to be adding the HTML for the header section. The header section contains a navigation bar across the top, which is going to have the logo in the top left. And also on the right hand side, we're going to have the menu links. We're going to add a large background image and also the featured text in the center, which is going to be both horizontally and vertically aligned. The text and the image is going to be static for now, but once we get onto the WordPress section later on in the course, the user will be able to change the background and also the text. So to get started with the header section, let's head over to our text editor. And let's get rid of the sidebar for now. So if we scroll down, we can delete the Hello World H1 heading. And then let's start with a comment for the header section. Okay, so the header section will be between the header tags. And we're going to get started with the navigation bar at the top of the page. So that will be in nav tags, and it's going to have some Bootstrap classes. The first one will be navbar, and then navbar default. So we'll be using a lot of these Bootstrap classes as we go through the project. If you're curious to know exactly what each one of these is doing, we can go over to the Bootstrap CSS in the CSS folder. And if we look for the bootstrap.css, for example, if we look for navbar default, so head into Bootstrap CSS, and if you use your text editor's find function, and then type in the class you want to look for, so I'm going to look for navbar default. This will then take you to the section of the CSS which applies. So you can see that by adding the navbar default, it includes various borders and background colors. So we can use this if you want to know exactly what's going on in the CSS behind the scenes, but it's also worth bearing in mind that any of these Bootstrap classes we have included, we can also add to or override in our own custom CSS file. So next we're going to add a div with the class of container fluid. And again, container fluid is a Bootstrap class. You can either use container fluid, which provides a fluid full width div, or we can use the container class by itself, which includes a div with a fixed width. And then within the container fluid, we're going to create a new div with a class of navbar header. And within this div, this is going to be the section, which includes the information for screen readers. And also if we take a look at the finished project, you can see if we shrink the browser down, it's a fully responsive website. So once we get below a certain size, the navigation menu turns into a drop-down menu. So the header is also going to contain the information for the drop-down button. So let's start with that button now. So the button is going to have a type of button. We'll add some Bootstrap classes. The first one is navbar toggle, and then collapsed. It's going to be collapsed by default, so we can add the data toggle to be equal to collapse. And the data target is equal to dot navbar hyphen collapse. So what the data target is doing, this is linking the button to a div with a class of navbar collapse, and we'll create that after the button. And nested inside the button, we're going to add the free icon bars, which are on the drop down button. So the first one, these will all be between span tags. So the first span tag will just be a class for screen readers. So this will have a class of SR only. And the text for the screen reader will be toggle navigation. And then next we'll add another span with a class of icon bar. So this is the first of the free icon bars. So it's going to be exactly the same for two more. So we can just copy and paste or duplicate that. And just change the spelling there. There we go. Okay, so let's check that on the preview. There we go. So on the smaller screen, we've got the drop down button appearing there. And that should disappear once we get to a certain size. There we go. So next we need to add the logo to the top left hand corner and also the free navigation links. So to start, the logo is going to go just below the button, but still within the navbar header div. And this is going to be a link. So we'll put the href tags, and this is going to link back to the index page, which is index.html. And the Bootstrap class is navbar brand. And because our logo is simply text, we can just type this in there. So tranquil spa. So that's the end of the navbar header section. So I'm just going to add some comments. So we'll call this the navbar header. And we'll end that there. So just below the navbar header div, the next div will have the free links of home, blog and latest news. So the container div will have the class of collapse. And then next we'll add the navbar collapse class, which we used for the data target. And then within this collapse section, we'll add our unordered list and add our Bootstrap classes of nav, navbar nav, and also navbar right, which pushes the navigation links to the right hand side of the div. And then free list items, which are also links. So the href for the first link is for home, so this will link to the index.html, and the text was home. And we need two more list items. The second one is for the blog.html, and change the name. And the third link is for the latest news section. Now I'm just going to leave the link empty for this one. We'll be creating our template for the blog section using Bootstrap, but when it comes to the latest news section, this is going to be dynamically generated in WordPress. We're basically going to be using the blog page, but we're just going to use a filter just to filter out the blog posts to be the latest news category. And then let's add some comments. So let's first add a comment to the navbar collapse closing div. And then the last one is for the container fluid. Now we can close that up there. So let's check that out in the browser and see how that's looking. Great, so we've got the logo appearing. We've got the free links on the right hand side, and shrinking the browser down, that drops to a drop down button which expands to show the free links. And by the way, because this drop down button is working, this also shows that our JavaScript, our Bootstrap JavaScript, which is included in the JS folder, is all linked correctly and it's all working. Down at the very bottom of the page, you can see that the links are already included in the Bootstrap template, both for jQuery and also the Bootstrap JavaScript. So we know that's all working correctly. So now we've got our navigation bar complete. Next, we're going to start on the background image and also the text. And we're going to call this the feature section. So we're going to put this just below the navigation. So let's copy that header and then paste this just below the closing nav tag, but still within the header. And I'm going to call this the feature section. So because the feature section has a large background image, which you want to stretch to the full width of the page, we're going to make use of the Bootstrap container fluid again. And then within the container fluid, we need to add another Bootstrap class of row, and also our own custom class, which is feature. So we can link to that in the CSS in the next video. And then add the path to the image. So image source. So we've got a images folder within the project, and then the large background image is called lakebg.jpg. And add some alt text in there. I'm just going to add lake background. So let's check if that's working okay. Head back into our project. So there we go. So there's a large image appearing in the background. So let's next add the text which overlays the image. So the text will be going in its own div, and we'll add a custom class of feature text. And then inside this container, we'll add our text in the p tags. So the text was fully responsive, premium spa theme for WordPress. And then I'm going to add some break tags after the word responsive and also after the word theme, just to split that up onto different lines. So if we go back into the browser and see how that's looking, we won't have the text appearing over the image just yet because we need to add some CSS for that to work. But the text is appearing just below, so we don't need to worry about that just yet. We'll solve that in the next video. So we'll just finish this section off by adding some closing comments. First of all, to the fluid container, and then to the div with the class of row, and then the feature text. So there we go. So that's the end of the HTML for the header section. If you join me in the next video, we'll continue with the header section by adding the CSS, and we'll also take a look at the Bootstrap rows and grid system. Welcome back. In the last video, we created the HTML for the header section. We included the top navigation bar with the menu links, the main background image, and also the feature text. So in this video we're going to make our website look more like the finished project by adding the CSS. So we're going to change the link color and background for the navigation, and we're also going to style the text and make sure that it's horizontally and vertically aligned to the background image. We'll also take a look at the Bootstrap grid system, and I'll show you how to add columns to our website to make it responsive. So let's get started in our text editor. We need to pull up the sidebar and go into our custom CSS. So just below the body, still within the global section, the first thing I need to add is a max width for the images. We're going to set them to 100%, which stops images stretching too big. So let's create a comment for the navbar section. So we're going to get started with the navbar section, and the main navigation has the class of navbar. So this is the part we'll be styling first. So dot and then navbar. So we need to add the purple background color. So the background is going to have a number of 97689C. And let's check that's working okay. So the background color has changed, but we need to get rid of the margin, which is at the very bottom, and pushing the background image down. So we simply do that by changing the margin bottom to be 0. Okay. And the next thing I want to do is remove the default border. It's pretty hard to see the default border around the navigation bar, but we can remove that by just setting the border to be 0. And then now we need to change the text for the logo and the navigation. So Bootstrap has a lot of classes and a lot of CSS, which is included as standard, and it can be sometimes difficult to find exactly which class we need to amend. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to go into the browser developer tools. So in Chrome, you need to right click and select inspect element. And then if you select the magnifying glass, and then just hover over the element we need to change and click, and then we should get a list of the classes which is affecting this particular element. So we can see the first element is the color for the navbar default navbar brand, and that's in the Bootstrap minified version. So we can change that color. So I'm just going to copy the class which affects that color, and then back into our custom CSS. Let's paste this in and change the color to be white, and that changes the color of the logo. We need to also do the same for the navigation links, which is the home, blog and latest news. So again, do the same, select the magnifying glass and choose one of the links. And again, we can override the standard default grey color by copying the Bootstrap class. And because we also want this to be white, we can add this in the same section. And that changes those to white. And then on the smaller mobile view, we also want the 3 icon bars to be white too. So again, select the magnifying glass, and if you can just select one of the icon bars, and make sure you can find the one which controls the background color. Copy the classes, and then let's put those into our CSS. And let's change the default background color. We'll change that to white and refresh. Great, so there we go. So the icon bars are all white now. So that's all the styling we need to add to the top navigation bar. So now we can move down to the featured area and we can start working on positioning the image and the text. So let's create a new comment for the feature section. And so we can add the text over the image, we need to use some relative and absolute positioning. So we need to make the container relative, so we can position the text within it. So the container for the feature section had a class of feature, which is a custom class we added ourselves. So let's start by adding that and setting the position to be relative. And because we want the background image to stretch to be the same width as the browser, we need to override the maximum width of 100% by adding the feature image class. And instead of max width, we're just going to set the width, this time of 100%. And this means that the image can stretch slightly larger or slightly smaller than the original size of the image. So now we've got the container positioned relative, we now need to change the text to be absolute. So we added another custom class, surrounded the text, which was a class of feature text. So next, let's start with that. So first, position is going to be set to absolute. And because we're using absolute positioning, we're going to set both the top and the bottom position to be equal. So they're both going to be 0. And now because that's positioned absolute, the text now appears over the image. So we can start working with getting it horizontally and vertically aligned. So we're going to start by vertically aligning the text now. So first of all, I'm going to just type this out and then I'll explain what this is doing afterwards. So the feature text class and then before. So set the content to be empty. The display type to be inline block. The height to take up 100% of the container. And lastly, vertical align to be middle. And we'll come back to that just in a moment. We'll just first of all add the styles for the text. So the feature class, and then the P, which surrounds the text. So this is going to also have the display type of inline block, and it will all come clear soon. Also vertical align to be middle. The text align will be centralized in the div. The width to be 100% of the container. So if we go back into the browser, and if we take a look at the finished project, there's a background color. It's quite faint, but it surrounds the text, which has rounded edges, and it's also semi-transparent. So let's add that now. So to start, we can add the background color, which has a RGBA value. So first of all, we need to add the red, green, and blue values. So to create the grey color, the first value is 74, 82, 95, and then the last value is the alpha, or the opacity. So I want that to be 0.2, which is the same as 20% opacity. The background has got rounded corners, which we get by adding a border radius of 10 pixels. The text color is white. Okay, so there's the background for the text in place. So basically what we're doing here is we're creating some text and we're adding some styles to it. And then we're adding a fake element just before the text. So we can use that as a full height reference to align the text in the div. So before the text, we're creating an empty div, which has no content. We're setting both the fake div and the text to be inline block, so they appear side by side. And because the fake element has a height of 100%, this will take up the full height of the div. And then because this is the full height of the div, we can then set the vertical align to be middle, and this will cause the text to be aligned in the middle of the div. So to get this trick to work, we just need to do one more thing. Because by default, inline block has a gap between elements, we need to remove this. So we need to add a property, which is 0 width. So if we change the font size to be 0, that will remove the gap between the fake element and the text. Because we've set the font size to be 0, we'll then need to add the font size in the p tags. So we want ours to be 48 pixels. So let's save that and check that on the browser. Okay, that's looking good. That's now vertically aligned to the background image. And we can also see the semi-transparent background color. So let's just add a little bit of padding, just of 3%. And space out the line height to be 80 pixels. And let's save and take a look at that. Great, so that's looking a lot better now. The next thing we need to do is align it horizontally in the div. So we're going to do that by adding some Bootstrap columns. So if we head back to getbootstrap.com, and then if we go in the CSS section, and then select the grid system on the right, and then scroll down to the grid options. So Bootstrap has a 12 column grid system, and to access that we use the class prefix of col and then dash, and then we can use the XS for the number of columns wide we want in extra small devices, SM for small devices or tablets, MD for medium devices or desktops, or LG for large desktops. So we can create divs which display differently on smaller or larger devices. So there's an example below. If we want to create a div which has 2 parts and spans the full width of the page, each div needs to take up 6 columns each. And the same if we want to create 3 columns side by side, we'll give each div a class of 4 columns. So let's put this into practice in our project. Back into the index page, if we look for the div which surrounds the text, just after the feature text class, we're going to add the Bootstrap columns. So we want the text to take up all the available space on a mobile view. So we can add col XS for extra small devices, 12. So that will take up the full 12 columns on a small device. If we don't want it to be full width on larger devices, we can add col MD8. So that will take up 8 parts of 12 or 2/3. And then larger still on large desktops, col LG6. So that will take up half the width of the web page. So let's save that and take a look. So if we scroll down to the small size, you can see the text takes up the full width. But once we hit the medium devices, this div is only taking up 8 parts. And because it's only taking up 8 parts, it's leaving 4 columns on the right hand side. So to make sure that this div stays in the middle of the page, we can add an offset on the left hand side. So to centralize this div, we need to add an offset of 2. And the way we do that is col. So the first one is MD, then dash offset. And then to offset it 2 columns, we set that to 2. So let's save that and see if that's working okay. Great, so the 8 column div is in the middle of the page with 2 columns either side now. And we'll do the same for the large devices. Because the large devices is taking up 6 parts, we need to add an offset of 3. So col LG offset 3. There we go. And the Bootstrap documentation's got some more information about the grid system and offsetting. There's also some examples you can take a look at in the offsetting section. So that's this video nearly finished. Just one more thing we need to add before we go is if we shrink the browser down, the text is pretty large. So when we get down to the small tablet or mobile sizes, we need to make sure that the text is smaller. So we can do that in our CSS by adding a media query. So let's add a mobile styling comment just at the very bottom of the page. Okay, so let's add a media query. So at media, screen, and we'll target the devices with a max width of 768 pixels. And by using 768 pixels, this keeps it in line with Bootstrap's media queries. So if we go back up to the top of the grid system, you can see the media query sizes that Bootstrap uses. So we're setting our media query for extra small devices, less than 768 pixels. Okay, so to reduce the font size, we need to add the class of feature text, and then P. And just add a space after and. There we go. So we need to reduce the font size. Let's set this to 28 pixels, and also the line height. That can be the same, that can also be 28 pixels. So let's save that and head back into the browser. So if we go back into the project and then shrink the browser down, you can see that the text now scales down on the smaller devices and fits within the container. And as we get larger and hit the media query, we'll get the larger text. So that's looking a lot better. So while we're in the media query, we can also just make the three links in the mobile view appear in the center of the page, and we can add that in the LIA section because these are list item hyperlinks. So text align center. There we go. So great, so that's it for this section. That's all the CSS completed for the header. So if you join me in the next video, we'll continue with the website and move down to the welcome section. Okay, so in the last video we completed the HTML and the CSS for the header section. And next, if we take a look at the finished website, we're going to start moving down and we're going to start with the welcome section. It's quite a simple section. There's just a level 2 heading at the top. There's also a divider image and then 4 links to different parts of the website. So let's get started. So head over to your index page and then copy the comment for the feature section. We're going to start working just below the closing header tag and paste that in. And this is going to be the welcome section. So the welcome section is going to be in the section tags, and the section tag is going to have an ID of welcome, so we can use that in the CSS. The whole div needs to have a class of container. So unlike the previous sections, we're just going to use a set width container. We don't want this stretching too wide. And then within the container, we add the usual div with the class of row. And then we'll set the number of Bootstrap columns. So we want the level 2 heading and also the divider image to be half the width of the web page. So we'll set the number of columns to be 6. And we'll add an offset of 3 on the left hand side. So we'll surround the text and the image with a div with a class of col sm6, and also for the offset, col sm offset 3. And then the level 2 heading, which is welcome to Tranquil Spa. And then just below the heading, we'll add the image. So the image source, this image is also in our images folder. So images / divider purple.png. So if we look at the finished project, you can see that the divider purple is on the white background color. But further down, we've got a purple background color. We've also got a divider with the silver parts. So we'll use the divider silver on these sections. So after the file path, we can add the alt text of divider and close that image off. And then let's just copy the closing div comments. So the first one is for the columns. The next one is for the rows. And the last one is for the container. So let's see how that's looking. Back into the browser and refresh. There we go, so the image and the text is centered. We need to do a little bit of work with the CSS, but that's okay for now. And then next we'll create the 4 images and the 4 links just below. So back into the text editor, we start just below the last closing row, but still within the main container. Let's create a new row. So a div class of row. And we'll also add a custom class of facilities. So we can use that in the CSS. So each of the individual links is going to take up 3 columns. So we can create 4 different divs with a class of col sm3. So the first one, div class of col sm3. So both the image and the text is going to be a link. So we'll add the a href and we'll just leave that blank. Within the link, let's add the image first. The image source of images, and the first image is makeup.png. With the alt text, just get rid of the sidebar. So the alt text is hair and makeup. So then just after the image, we can add the text for the link. So hair, and then to get the and symbol, we use the ampersand, then amp semicolon, and then makeup. And then let's add some comments to the closing divs. So the outside one is for the row, and then the inner one is for the 3-column div. So because we're going to be using this 3-column div 4 times, let's copy this section and then paste it in below 3 more times. And let's save that and check that out in the browser. And refresh. Great, so that's working. We've got the 4 images, they're all hyperlinks. We can see the underline once we hover over, and also the text is there. So let's now change the images and the text. So the first div is fine. Let's move down to the second image. And the second image has a name of candles.png. The alt text is spa facilities. And also the text is spa facilities. And then the third section has an image called lake .png, and the text is Lakeside Retreat. And also the same for the alt text. And finally the last one, the image name is pool.png. The text is all our facilities. And we'll copy that for the alt text too. Okay, so let's see that in the browser. And refresh. Okay, so that's fine for now. Next, I'm going to move on and add some CSS for this section. We want to make sure that the level 2 heading is centralized, and we need some spacing above and below the images. We're also going to centralize the text and remove the underline when hovered over, and we'll also change the text color. So let's do that in the custom CSS. I'm going to start with the level 2 heading, and because we'll be using this many times over on the site, I'm going to put this in the global section at the top. So just below the image, we can add the H2 there. So we need to text align center. I want the font size to be 2 ms, and also to create a little bit of space on the top and bottom, let's add a little bit of margin. So margin top 30 pixels, and also some margin on the bottom to be 20 pixels. So let's save that and check that out in the browser. So now we've got the text in the middle and also a little bit of space above and below. And while we're also in the global section, we can remove the underline from the hyperlinks when we hover over. So just below the H2, let's select A, hover. And we can remove the underline by setting the text decoration to be none. And let's also set the text color while we're here. So when hovered over, it needs to be 97689C. So now when we hover over, the text changes to purple and the underline has been removed. And because we've set the H2 font size to be 2 ms, that's probably going to be a little bit too big when we get down to the mobile size. So let's head down to the media query. And below the feature text, let's add the H2, and we'll just reduce the font size to be 1.6 ms. So now we've added the global styles, we can start by adding a welcome section and add some of the welcome specific styles. So let's copy the comment for mobile styling, and we'll paste it just above the mobile styling section. And let's call this bit the welcome section. So the welcome section, we give a ID of welcome, and the welcome section has got a white background color. And let's add some padding to the bottom of the section so everything below doesn't get too close. So we'll set the padding bottom to 30 pixels. And we'll also set all the text in this section to be in the center. Okay. So in the global section, we changed the color of the links when we hovered over them. But now we need to set the color to override the default blue. So welcome, and then A, because they're links. And the color is going to have the value of 494646, which is the darker grey color. So next in this section with the images and the text, we want to make the text a little bit bigger, and also the individual images. We're going to make them a little bit smaller and add some margin on the top and bottom to space them out a little bit more. So surrounding this row, if we look back in the HTML, The 4 individual divs were all surrounded with a row, and we'll give that row a custom class of facilities. So let's use that now. So let's increase the font size. So font size, let's set that to 1.5 ems. And also the facilities image. So let's set the display to be block. And to make them a little bit smaller, we can set the maximum width to be 60%. So that looks a little bit better. And then to add the spacing, we'll set the margin. I'm going to put 30 pixels on the top and bottom, and set the left and right to be auto. So there we go, so that's us finished now with the welcome section. That's the end of this video, and if you join me in the next video, we'll continue with the website, and we'll move down to creating the latest offers section. See you there. Okay, so our website's taken shape now. We've completed the header section and also the featured image and text. We'll then move down to creating the welcome section, which has got links to other sections of the website. So if we take a look at the finished website, the next part we're going to be creating is the latest offers section, and it's going to consist of a similar level 2 heading and divider to the last section. And then we're going to create a new row with 3 different special offers. And the 3 different offers are static text for now, but once we get to the WordPress section later on in the course, we'll make sure that the user can log in and change the values so they can keep the special offers up to date, even without any technical knowledge. So let's get started in the index page. So we'll get started with a comment, and this section is going to be called the latest offers. And we'll do that just below the welcome section that we done in the last video. So if we locate the closing section, and then paste the comment just below there. So that's latest offers. Okay, so the latest offers will have its own section too. And this will have an ID of latest offers. Then within the section, we'll create the usual div with a class of container. And then because the row that we're going to be using is pretty much the same as the last section, we can just copy the div with the class of row, and we can reuse that. So paste that within the container. And then we need to change the level 2 heading to latest offers. And because this time we're on a purple background, let's change the divider to be the divider silver.png. And let's take a look at that. Okay, so there's our section with the level 2 heading and the divider. So we're just going to add one more custom class, which is going to be a class to add some margin to the bottom of the divider. If we look at the finished project, we need to make sure that the 3 divs below the divider are slightly pushed down from the image. So let's add the class to the row of margin bottom, and we'll add that margin in the next video in the CSS. And let's just add a closing comment to the container. So let's put the 3 special offers in their own row. So let's create a new div with a class of row. So we're going to create the 3 special offer divs, but we need to put those 3 special offer divs into a container. So we're going to put a full 12 column width container surrounding those. So div with a class of col sm12, and that'll create a full 12 column container. And because the three special offer sections are nested, we need to create a new row for those to go inside. So within the row, the first special offer is going to be div class col sm4, so it takes up 1/3 of the page. And also, so we can add our custom styles, we'll also add a custom class of offer. So to start, we need to put the price. We need to put price in the span tags, and then we'll put the name of the special offer in a level 3 heading, and then 2 separate paragraph tags just below. So for the price, the span, and then in between there, the first one had a price of $60. And then below that, in the level 3 heading, the name of the offer. So the first one is family offer. I'm just going to put a break tag in there. And then the p tags. So the first line of text was family pool. And then line 2 was great day out. So let's see how that's looking. So it's all there, but there's still a little bit of work to do with the CSS. But let's continue for now, adding the rest of the offers. So if we'll locate the div, in fact, we'll add some comments first. So just copy the container comment. And then the first one is for the class of offer. The second one is col sm4. And then this is the row. In fact, this is the nested row. Then just below that, it's the 12 column wrapper. And then the final row container. So let's copy the full section for the special offer. And then let's paste it in twice, just below. So the second special offer had the price of $120. And this was a bridal package. So the name of the offer was for the bride. And the first line of the text was hair and makeup. And lastly, it was the full pamper package. And then the last special offer was the weekend pass, which had a price of $90. So the name was Weekend Pass. The text was Modern Facilities. And the last one had the text of Perfect Gift. Okay, so back into the browser. That's all appearing fine. That's exactly how we want it. And join me in the next video and we'll continue with this section by adding the CSS.